Namaste, friends, and welcome to our Sunday edition of Words of Wisdom Gyan Ganga on our Virat Hindustan Sangam social media channels. It is 8 p.m. and we have another interesting discussion for the next 30 to 40 minutes on are we heading for a war with China? And Dr. Subramanian Swamy, President of Virat Hindustan Sangam, will give us his ideas. And we know today you have got a lot of pressing engagement, the football match. So we'll be sharp and crisp around 30 to 35 minutes and we will be discussing. I thank my co-host Ramesh Swamy for being with us on this show and our technical team for being behind the scene, helping us put this program together every Sunday. So with these words, it's over to Dr. Subramanian Swamy to start this discussion whether we are heading for a war with China and all the ifs and buts and the background to educate our viewers across the globe on this very important issue. Over to Dr. Subramanian Swamy.
Thank you, Jagdish. I think we'll have to be doing in the next 8 months quite often this this program, this kind of on China, because it's a developing situation. The topic was are we heading for a war with China? That was the heading given for today's program. I think it's more appropriate is a war heading towards India. Because at the moment within India, there's hardly any debate whether there'll be a war and what will the Chinese be doing, etc. It's much more that who is a Chinese agent, who is not a Chinese agent. And the principal quarrel seems to be between Mr. Modi and Mr. Rahul Gandhi, each making insinuation and allegations. So now we are not interested in that because if anything is true, it has to be done by the investigating agencies. They should put a report. If there's nothing, it's just abuse. It's a waste of time for us. I will only say this, that we are in a situation where the Chinese are posing themselves for the opportune moment to strike, and that opportune moment is coming closer and closer. I would like to tell the readers that I had written about a year and a half ago a book which was published by Rupa. It's called the Himalayan Challenge. The Himalayan Challenge gives you right from about 2000 years ago what the relationship was and how it developed, how it changed, and ultimately how 1962 happened and how another war could happen. So those who want some research on this in form of books and so on, they're going to read my book and then perhaps also see the appendix to see which are the other books I have listed that should be read. First of all, the war that we are facing is a multi-dimensional war. It is not the Chinese PLA troops came down the mountain and we confronted them, and then we picked up our lathis and beat them, and then they ran away. That's not the war I'm talking about. I'm talking about the war for which Mr. Xi Jinping and his colleagues are systematically preparing, and they are in a number of dimensions, and you can see those dimensions already. Of course, I would say they're on land. We have seen them in Depsang. That's, by the way, I would like to make one thing clear. In 1996, the Mr. Narasimha Rao's government had prepared, with the help of the Chinese counterpart, a agreement of no war. And they had listed a variety of steps that would be taken to see that peace is maintained. But they said on the disputed part, we draw a line called the line of actual control, and we are not going to the question as to which is our territory and which is Chinese territory, but we'll say that till we determine that by peaceful negotiation, which is our territory and which is their territory, to prevent a military battle between India and China and misunderstanding, we draw this line of actual control. The actual control line is not a boundary. It is because we say Aksai Chin is part of India and Aksai Chin is on the other side of the boundary. So and the Chinese say that Chushul is theirs and Chushul is on our side of the boundary. So the question is, what has been violated is an agreement signed by two presidents of two heads of government of India and China, and it was a solemn assurance given that whatever may happen, we will not use the military to settle our things. We will have a discussion and so on. So what has been broken by the Chinese this time is they have crossed that line, and having crossed the line, India is all that India has been doing is go back, you can't stay here, and so on. India is not making any progress of moving into what we claim, what we consider as our land. So it's a ground ground land, ground at the ground level. There is, excuse me, in the ground level there is a war, but that war is very tepid compared to what else is going on. And I'm holding this talk today to begin the process of making you aware what is it that you are facing. You're not facing just Chinese PLA troops coming with lathis and you going with lathis and throwing stones there, that kind of thing that we saw earlier on in Galwan, and now we are seeing it in Arunachal. We are now seeing a very sinister design by the Chinese, which nobody in the Indian government seems to be aware, or is being coming out. It's coming in bits and pieces from the newspapers when they take the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or the London Times, etc., to reproduce those and put it out. But let me put it more clearly to you. First of all, the land part is Depsang, where the Chinese have crossed the LAC and occupied Indian territory. That's on the border with China and next to the parts that which borders with Pakistan held Kashmir. So that's a very sensitive area, but the Chinese have taken it over. Number two, Galwan, we threw them out, we pushed them out, and large numbers of their people died in the fall that took place from being pushed down. Indians also, 20 soldiers died, and we cremated them. That has been vacated by India and now occupied by China. I don't know why India vacated it, but after having won it and having lost 20 of our soldiers, it has been vacated. It has not been told to the Indian public. We have vacated, and China has occupied Galwan right from the top of the hill down to the bottom. Then there is a Kailash mountain where India was sitting on the top, which is just next to the Pangon Lake, and India was sitting on the top of it. And then Mr. Jaishankar announced we want for goodwill, to create goodwill. We are vacating it for the Chinese. So the Chinese are now climbed and started sitting on Kailash. So why this happened? I mean, how can you, when you're in a hostile situation, how can you say we want to create a good impression on the Chinese? This is what Mr. Jaishankar said. So now we have a new theater, which is Tawang. Tawang is the holiest of holy temple for the Buddhists, is there. And in fact, the next spiritual head of Buddhist religion of Tibet is going to perhaps even come from a little young boy picked up in Tawang. And Tawang is a very patriotic place. So on 15th of August, maximum number of tricolor is hoisted in Tawang. So that Tawang is now under siege from the Chinese. Of course, we have moved in and cut their route off, and therefore they have to go back. But we really don't know when are they going to come again. So Tawang is another thing area which is in the mountains of Arunachal, and we have to be extremely careful. So this is one ground level military, classic military battles. And interestingly, some people mentioned the buffer zones that have been created. Buffer zones have been created where? On Indian territory. That is, there is a line of actual control. The Chinese have crossed it, and we say, no, this is not your territory. And the Chinese says, okay, we may declare it as a buffer zone. So Indian territory is declared as a buffer zone, and the Chinese are, naturally, if it's a buffer zone, they can just walk in and out, and they're walking in and out and creating infrastructure for it. So this is also not being told to us. Now, the second dimension of the war, which I'd like to mention to you, is the cyber warfare. And look at what two occasions the Chinese are giving you a warning. One is the Bombay electricity cut, which was a massive, cut of electricity. It was done by cyber warfare, and now it is admitted by the government of India that All India Medical Institute, all the computer connections, medicines, what patients, in which bed they are in, and all this had to be done manually because the computers were down. Even today, we have not been able to restore it. And all that the Indian government has so far done is ask Interpol whether they can give us assistance to prove that the Chinese did it. But Chinese own internal publications are glee about it and celebrating it. So this is another dimension of war none of us is talking about. Yeah, and in fact, one can say it's a future war. Then you come to a question of what's happening in the satellites, with the satellites. Many of the satellites which the Chinese have launched, they have rockets which they can have missiles which can be sent into Indian territory, and we don't have a counter for that. We don't have a counter to blow up those satellites, and we haven't been able to study it. The only country which can really help us is the United States, but we haven't reached any agreement with them. So this is another aspect. Then you come to the question of India. I think we have got a map. I've put out a map. India, despite being in this kind of hostile position, its imports from China is increasing and increasing and increasing. And here's the map. And you see what you see in the map, India-China trade. And the red one is the Indian imports from China. It's going up, boom, boom, boom. And what China is buying from us, they're buying some, but a very small amount. In the case of India, we have gone from $5,000 million, that is $5 billion, all the way to $34 billion. And there's a jump of 7 times almost. Whereas on exporting to China, what is the thing? It's hardly double. It's just about double. So why is it that we are importing so much from China? What is it that you are importing from China? You can't import from anywhere else. You're not even paying it in rupees. You're buying it and selling. You're buying Chinese goods with dollars, with American dollars, which you earn by exporting to America. So here is a case where this is also a war. In a wartime, this is an important thing, because if you are using the Chinese raw materials, the Chinese machinery, etc., then you are vulnerable in case when a war comes and the Chinese close it down. So now there are areas which are not coming in the newspapers. Let me warn you again. The Sikkim, Bhutan, in between China, and then below it is India, that is the Bagdogra area, and it's a thin strip of Bengal which connects to a thin strip of Assam. So if the Chinese decide to come straight through and go to Bangladesh, and don't think that Bangladesh is your slave country, that they will only do what you want them to do. They can assess that now the Chinese are the masters here, and they may even allow the Chinese to cut through. That means whole of Assam is cut off because of that thin strip of thing. Now that we are not hardly paying any attention to it. It's a very, very serious matter. Then it comes to Indian Ocean. The Chinese have already started moving the ships here. They are bullying the Sri Lankans that the Indians didn't do anything for you. That is when it is a fact when Oman Tata refineries were being set up. Rajapaksa came to the then Indian government of Manmohan Singh and asked whether they would give them a loan so they could do it, because so far all that Sri Lanka has been doing is exporting tea, and based on that export, they are importing their thing. Now they want to become a modern economy. So he said, I want to build a few factories. And for that, I thought the Hamantota would be a great thing to do, and that too, it was in the southern part, closer to the Indian Ocean. So we, on Mrs. in the Sonia Gandhi's direction, Manmohan Singh said, no, we can't give you even a penny on this because you butchered Tamils and so on. Tamils were not butchered by Sri Lankan Sinhalese. They were butchered by LTT. They were the ones who said any Tamil who wants peace and quiet, he's a traitor. And they were it's the LTT which was killing them. So, but anyway, this is the thing by which we refused to give them a loan. And then the Chinese came. Why are you asking the Indians? We'll give you double that amount, and so on. And the Sri Lankans got into a trap. So you are finding Nepal, Bhutan also, by the way. Now they said to India, don't come anymore. We'll manage the Chinese ourselves. Then Bangladesh, not too sure about it. And Burma has gone completely on the Chinese side. Sri Lanka in a terrible fix on the debt. So what you are saying, therefore, is that this is no more just a military coming down from the Himalayas. It is now, in addition to that, cyber warfare. It is now in addition to attacks from the Indian Ocean. And what is it? Do we have a plan? Of course, in Indian Ocean, Malacca Strait, we are on one side and Indonesia on the other side. Have we ever even approached Indonesia? Then let's together decide that only those people that can go through this Malacca Strait. That is, for example, China coming ships to go to Europe. They have to pass through that. We said we won't let it pass unless they pay a certain amount of money, like the Suez Canal. But that has not been done. So what we are now seeking, so which I would in another 5 minutes ask you if you have any questions, is that we are today in a situation where we don't have a strategy. What is the strategy? The Chinese are, first of all, you say, koi aaya hi nahi. That is what the Prime Minister said. How can he say that? When they have already come, and your IFS senior official gave in writing that the Chinese have come, they've occupied this place, they've occupied that place, and then we go and consult the Russians. The Russians say, no, that is only field operations which the Chinese are doing. It is just for exercises. They'll go away soon. They never went back. So you went to the Russians. Why? Because you think that it is Soviet Union. Soviet Union is gone. Soviet Union had both Russia and Ukraine. And so you can't say today that Russia is the successor of Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union, what they didn't do, I'm not in it. But today, Russia is a junior partner of China, because they are totally dependent for money on the Chinese, and they have huge debts owing to the Chinese. So today now you will find that Russia is not talking anything over this attack that took place. At least America gave a very wishy-washy answer, and both sides should not disengage. They should go back to their own positions and all that stuff. And we are our sympathies with India or something like that. Now, Russia has been totally silent, not a word. And it's supposed to be a good friend. And you get on Twitter, you get all these people. Oh, Russia has been our so much a good friend, but Russia came into existence only in 1992. Where was that Russia which was helping us earlier? There was no such Russia. It was the Soviet Union, which consisted of 16 different countries, which are today 16 different countries like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and so on and so forth. All these were once upon a time the part of the Soviet Union. It's now all disintegrated. There's only Russia, and Russia is a junior partner of China. So where is this analysis going on? Well, that's the Prime Minister ready to hold a debate. I'm not talking about with the opposition. I'm saying even within your own party. And in the party, all these chamchas they're being fed money by PMO officials, and all they say, oh, wonderful world statement and all. What is this world statement we saw? We saw Modi running towards Xi Jinping and shaking hands with him, and then the media playing it big. Xi and Modi meet, and Modi returns, and next day you have Tawang incident. So I think we are just fooling ourselves, and time has come to seriously think in terms of how to have a preparedness for a war. Otherwise, the Chinese will probably chop off parts of Sikkim. They'll chop off Bagdogra, and we will be Assam will be abandoned, and we'll lose control over it. And then from the ocean, God knows what they will do in that. And because we have no information, no strategy, we don't know whether Maldives is with us. Actually, Maldives was with the Chinese for quite some time, and they're still with them. We don't know how the Iran is going to react, which is on the other border. The Americans, they say, speak, put your money where your mouth is, as they say. They're saying, you tell us, are you in Quad or not? If you're not in Quad, then you'll have to do it, treat it as a military get together. You may not consider it as a military alliance, but you may certainly say that we will have a common military strategy towards China. But we are saying, no, we'll only talk about environment and all that, which the Americans laugh off and say you're not serious. And that's why the statement of the Americans this time is the most diluted statement the United States has ever made. So what am I saying about the war? War is going to come to you. You're not going to war. So he says, is India headed for war? India is headed nowhere. India is like one of those donkeys who were given 2 buckets of water and couldn't decide which bucket to drink from, and ultimately died of thirst. So we'll end up like that. So it has got the people will have to say, just by praising Modi, you're not going to get your defense. And it's also unfair to Mr. Modi to keep him in this darkness that the whole country is on his side. The country is not. Jawaharlal Nehru learned the hard way in 1962. So I think what I'm trying to do is initiate a series of articles as goes, bringing out more and more information as I collect them, so the public knows exactly where we stand and demand action from our people. Over to you, Jagdish. If anyone wants to say anything.
Dr. Swamy, sorry,
Yes.
Dr. Swamy, I
Yeah.
will ask, I'll put before you the question. This is the first question from one of our viewers. It's on your screen. Does India has military capability, commitment to counter China?
India, if it is to, if the military capability is meant, whether any military division of the Chinese People's Army comes across the Himalayas, and will India be able to thrash them and send them running back? Yes, we have that capacity. If we are real short on the inventory of, say, weapons, I would suggest that you tell the Americans that, see, as far as fighting China is concerned, only India can. We have the manpower, and we, even if we are not in alliance with you, we are on the same side. So please give us the weapons. Use the Israelis also to use their influence with the Americans to give it, and so that is that shortcoming can be fulfilled. But as far as the military is concerned, military to military, Indian government, Indian army will thrash them, and we have thrashed them before also. 1967 in the Sikkim border, uh, Thagla, no, not Thagla, it was another pass where the Chinese brought in their army to take over Sikkim. And that time in 1967, we gave them such a bashing that they had to run, and huge casualties they suffered, and we secured Sikkim, and that the Nathula Pass it was called. Then we have 1987 when in Sumdurung Valley in Arunachal, the same issue, the Chinese came pouring down, the Indian troops thrashed them, and they went away. Galwan, we have seen it. Don't have any doubts about that. But the war is no more a one-dimensional war. It's a multi-dimensional war. And if they suddenly shut down everything here, don't ask our army to continue fighting. They will not be able to. All their transportation system, their communication system, everything will break down. So there we have paid no attention, because all we are interested in, wah, 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 this man embraced you, that man kissed you. You know, this is the all that you are reading in the newspapers. We should concretely sit down and find out what are the shortcomings, talk to the military, find out what more they want. If you have to print notes, print notes. But ultimately, those gaps you fill, which is I mentioned to you, it's not a war of one dimension, it's a war of 5 dimensions. All 5 dimensions you fill, you can thrash the Chinese. And in fact, necessarily, I'm telling you, if you have a war, you should think in terms of liberating Tibet. You can even think in terms of declaring Taiwan as an independent country. So I think once you are in a war, then many things open up. But I would hope that the Chinese recognize this, and don't think that everybody will be fooled by them. There are lots of hard-nosed thinkers in India who will rise to the occasion and see that the Chinese get a befitting answer.
Ramesh, you
So,
want to
Dr.
take a
Yeah,
question, or
yeah,
there's a question of the
no,
viewers on the screen?
yeah,
You
good.
want
Let the
to,
viewers go. I'm fine with the viewers. Go ahead, Jagdish.
Dr.
I'm fine.
Swamy, this question on the screen from Prasad Kumar. Would Biden administration come to India's help in case of a war with China? Since Russia is in its own war, what help can get from Russia?
No, the question is Russia is out of the question. What happened? They will not. They're not even delivering what you paid for S-400. They just gave us one. They haven't given the others. They've given it to China. You see. So Russians are junior partners of China. Don't expect anything from them. They made a fool of us, or fool of our government, or more importantly, fool of our ministers, and gave them all kinds of rubbishy stories. No, the Chinese want to have good relations, etc. But I'm not on that. What can the Americans do? I don't want anything from the Americans except their weapons. They're lying there, go downs. They gave it to the Taliban by just walking away from what that Balgram, military center of theirs. They just went away one day, and all the aeroplanes, modern guns, everything, the Taliban has taken it. So I'm saying to the Americans, I'll only say to the Americans, for yours, you'll be also benefited if we defeat the Chinese. So just give us the weapons, and use your Israelis, because the Israelis are very well disposed to you. Tell them you have a lot of influence in America. Please see that the Americans deliver all the weapons you want. That's the only thing we need from the Americans. Otherwise, we can do it all ourselves.
Ramesh?
No, that's easy. I'm done. So there is one more question. I mean, this a lot of heavy machinery we import from China is not sold to us by the West. I don't think this is true because India does export a lot from the West too. Um, so your thoughts, Dr. Swamy? I don't think this is
If
necessarily true.
you are paying in dollars, tell the put out an international tender for saying that on such and such dollar price, which will also ready to negotiate. Please sell us this. You will get buyers and buyers. These are all rubbish, undocumented, unproven things that are spread around by our government to hide their own weaknesses of being twisted by the arm by the Russians.
There's one more thing here, Dr. Swamy. It says thoughts on economic ramifications given the Chinese dominant position. Any thoughts on this? Because I guess this comes to the previous question. I mean, India thinking there is no alternative to China, right? I mean, we are not thinking far ahead because given the trade deficit we just saw, I mean, it's just widening. The imports are just widening every month for that matter. Because I think based on latest statistics, Dr. Swamy, we are already 80% between April and November, now October today. We are already there compared to the last year. So our imports are only galloping. And there are news reports.
Why is it galloping? What are you buying that is necessary?
No, they're all finished goods, Dr. Swamy, and what we export, as you said, is only raw material.
Yes.
I mean,
what is from us taking the raw material?
Raw material, and we are buying finished goods.
Yeah,
finished goods.
Absolutely. What is it? You buy Lenovo. Lenovo is not produced in the United States. It's produced in Taiwan. They only put the keyboards and
and all those things.
it's a screen and so on. And that's the thing. I would say to you that if you're going to pay the Chinese with dollars, you on the same basis you put out a tender and say that for the lowest price we are willing to buy, and then say nobody wants to sell it to you. That's not correct. Nobody's doing that. These are all propagandists, you see, who are put out to say no, Russians, Americans will not sell to us. How do you know? Have you put out a tender and the Americans have refused? So
for a right price, Dr. Swamy, everything is available.
Yeah, I know.
And the prices need not necessarily be money. I'm just saying for the right price.
Yeah. No, I am not into this question of whether you're going to be a military ally of the Americans or not. We are just telling that we are going to fight the Chinese. This is an American interest also, but we don't want anything from you except weapons. Please give us the weapons at the cheapest price, and I'm sure they will give it. I have dealt with the Americans when I was minister in Chandrasekhar's time.
Mm-hmm.
I know how the Americans, despite we having no relations with them in 1962, they rushed whatever they could at the short notice. John Kennedy was the president at that time. These are all ways of the Russian lobby is very strong in India. The Chinese lobby is very strong. They just go on talking this rubbish that nobody else will sell, only the Russians will sell. The Russians are a miserable lot. They can't defeat Ukraine. All they can do is kill their population. What kind of people are these?
One last question, Dr. Swamy, and we can wind up. I mean, this has come up in this particular question in different forms, option or the other. What will be the impact on the economy if we go into a war?
Indian economy's main malady, I have been saying over and over again, and in my award-winning book, Reset, that the main problem with the Indian economy under Mr. Narendra Modi is the lack of demand. The moment you have a war, demand is the first thing that will start rising. And for demand increasing, when there is a supply excess, you can print notes. It won't be inflationary. And so this is nonsensical to say that our economy would crumble if we go to war. In fact, our economy will boom if we go to war.
Thank you. Arvindji, if you can just conclude, then we're good to go, because we're going to conclude early today. Or if you have a quick question, and then we can conclude.
subject where Dr. Swamy is an expert, and he is the person who can really analyze the Indo-China situation. And he has been suggesting that if China is an aggressor, we should take head-on to China. But maybe government of India is not listening. I think it is a high time that the Swamy heard is acting by the government of India, and once you this thing, that taken by the government. Thank you, Dr. Swamy, for highlighting this important issue. China has been an aggressor recently, and we all know about LSC and all that. So therefore, we can't stretch the subject too far today. And as Ramesh said, there's another big event going on in Qatar, Doha, where a large number of Arab interested the FIFA World Cup. Thank you, Jagdeep. Thank you, Ramesh. And thank the technical team led by Ashish Chetty, Rakesh, Ishwar Iyer, Swaminathan, Tejas, Naval Gul, Vishal Mehta, Najesh Nair. We'll be meeting again next Sunday. That is Christmas, 25th of December. Wishing all the viewers a happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, and we'll be meeting Sunday 8 p.m. With a new topic and Dr. Subramanian. Till then, Namaskar, Jai Hind.
धन्यवाद.